A very warm welcome to the second short talk at the 2020 International Literary Translation and Creative Writing Summer School at the British Centre for Literary Translation. My name is Cecilia Rossi and I am Senior Lecturer in Literature and Translation at the School of Literature, Drama and Creative Writing, which houses the BCLT at the University of East Anglia. I will be joined by my colleague Lucila Cordone from the AATI, which is the Argentine Association of Translators and Interpreters, partners in my 4-year-long research project on the translation of post-conflict literature. So, the aim of this talk is to discuss the project that we have been working on for the last 4 years, as it has been linked up to the BCLT Summer School since July 2017. In her essay Translation, the Biography of an Art Form, the American translator Alice Kaplan states that, quote, "What interests me is the possibility of accounting for the lived experience of translators, those silent agents of literary history," end of quote. The lived experience of translators is a phrase that resonates with me, since the main focus of my research has been, for the past few years, the translation process, what actually goes on during the process of translating a literary text. Indeed, one can say that every translation always tells two stories, the writer's story, but also the translator's. The choices made by the translator in the course of translating will be inevitably born out of the lived experience of the translator. So how did I, as a practicing literary translator, become involved in a 4-year-long research project which aims to examine the translation process of works which have resulted from past conflict? More specifically, how did I become interested in how the literary translation process could contribute to other disciplines, such as memory studies? In 2014, I attended a conference at the Senate House, the University of London, as part of the focus of the New Poetics of Disappearance conference. So part of the focus at the New Poetics of Disappearance conference was the new Argentine fiction written by the Generación Post-Dictadura, post-dictatorship generation, defined by the Argentine critic Elsa Drukarov as writers born in the 1970s, amongst whom are the hijos or children of the disappeared. These writers are described as the prisoners of the tower, placed on the shoulders of the preceding generation, the militants from the 1960s, who suffered the persecution during the years of the dictatorship, 1976 to 1983. And who now bear the heavy load of the past. Many important questions were debated at that conference regarding the relationship between writing and memory, in particular the processes and mechanisms through which memory, both personal and collective, historical and cultural, can be reconstructed in fiction and related forms, such as creative non-fiction, autobiography, memoir. But no one was referring at all to the writing of texts in translation. If all the forms of writing listed above are examples of the textual mode for the mediation of memories of past events, then the translation of these texts represents a further level of mediation. Some of the questions that I asked myself at the time were, in what ways does the literary translation process allow us to rethink the process of preservation or construction of a country's cultural memory? What is the role of literary translation? More precisely, what is the role of the literary translator in this process? These are central questions of my current research project, which is part of the cross-language dynamics reshaping community project led by the University of Manchester. And the AATI are project partners in this AHRC AURI Open World Research Initiative project. Right from the start of our collaboration, we set out to organize literary translation workshops both at the BCLT Summer School and at the Escuela de Otoño de Traducción Literaria, the Autumn School of Literary Translation, organized by the AATI, Argentine Association of Translators and Interpreters, and the Instituto Lenguas Vivas in Buenos Aires, Argentina, as part of our AHC AURI project, so as to examine how communities affected by past conflict incorporate their experiences into cultural memory, and how that memory can be sustained and circulated across language borders. So far, we have worked with a number of writers. We have worked with British novelist Giles Fawden and his novel in progress Belgrano, which takes its name from the battleship Belgrano sunk during the Malvinas-Falklands War of 1982. We also worked with the Uruguayan short story writer Vera Giacconi and her short story A Oscuras, In the Dark, which deals with growing up during the last military dictatorship in Argentina, told from the viewpoint of a child. We also worked with Julianne Pacheco and her short story Lemon Pie from her volume The Lucky Ones, set in Cali, Colombia, following the death of drug lord Pablo Escobar. With Argentine writer Felix Brusone, representative of the Literatura de Hijos, or literature of the children of the disappeared, in post-dictatorship Argentina, and his short story Unimog from his short story collection 76. With KJ Orr and her short stories Disappearances, set in post-dictatorship Argentina, with Chilean writer Lina Meruane and excerpts from Cercada, her novella set in post-dictatorship Chile, and with Slovenian writer Goran Vojnovic and excerpts from his third novel, The Fig Tree, a multi-generational family saga, which shows how the historical realities and turbulent times have affected one family in the Balkans. Now, my colleague, Lucila, will talk about the project at AATI and Lenguas Vivas.
Thank you, Ceci, and thank you, Anna Good, and thanks to the BCLT for inviting me to be here. Although, of course, I would prefer to be in Norwich, in the campus. Unfortunately, we have to.
We would all prefer that.
Yes, I'm sure about that. But well, it's nice to be in Buenos Aires and at the BCLT at the same time. So thank you very much for this. And well, let me. Ceci has introduced our collaboration, but let me talk very briefly of our program and how we came to collaborate with the BCLT. Well, as Cecilia has already told you, this is Escuela de Otoño de Traducción Literaria, which is held in autumn, unlike the summer school. It is organized in April in Buenos Aires. And the main reason for this was that we don't have the campus in Buenos Aires as you do have in Norwich. We have a very nice 19th century building, but we cannot spend the whole week there. Well, there are no living spaces, there are just classrooms. So what we did was to adapt the summer school core, which is working with the authors, and adapted to a city, a bustling city full of cultural spaces and museums, and the book fair, which is held in April. So what we do is have the workshops, the literary translation and creative writing workshops at Lenguas Vivas, and then we flock all together to the book fair, to the literary translation seminar organized by ATI at the book fair, and then attend and do presentations. In the last few years, we have also started incorporating Malva presentations at Malva, the Museum de Arte Latinoamericano de Buenos Aires, and then also incorporated with, especially, well, the year with Giles Fodden, we incorporated the city, different spaces in the city, which dealt, in the case of Giles and KJ Orr, with the stories we were translating. So we turned the lack of the space you have in UEA into an asset. So we managed to incorporate the city into our writing, into a translation. So there was a group with Giles Fodden in 2017 and Espacio de la Memoria, which was a core of Cecilia's work and translation work. And then there's Julian Pacheco and the group at the book fair, and then Ceci Rossi with Coetzia and Soledad Constantini and Malva in one of our talks. And this is a 2019 picture of KJ and Cecilia at the book fair. And, well, Cecilia at Parque de la Memoria. You can see KJ Orr and Katia Pizzi in the background. And then the group at an art museum, which is actually part of the story of disappearances, right? So, well, maybe Ceci can talk to you a bit more about disappearances and one of the key issues we discussed.
Thank you, Lucila. Yes, I mean, I quite like the idea that the students, participants in the Escuela de Otoño, as they were working with KJ Orr's text, they were able to visit some of the places in which the story is set and experience the city in a different way. So I'm going to present you with a case study, the workshopping of disappearances by KJ Orr. Okay, Disappearances by KJ Orr was the winner of the BBC Short Story Prize in 2016, and you can read the full text on the Guardian website. The link is here. In this story, a retired plastic surgeon finds himself drawn to a waitress in a Buenos Aires cafe. We learn in the story that the waitress's father disappeared during the last military dictatorship, which ruled Argentina, as we have said, since between March 1976 and December 1983. The story is written in the voice of the protagonist, who at one point, referring to his family and his relationship with his family, says, quote, "It was a game. I took pleasure in playing the subversive. It suited me well." It is this adjective, subversive, that I was perhaps most looking forward to discussing with the author in the context of the literary translation workshops at the Escuela de Otoño de Traducción Literaria in April 2019. Subversivo, subversive, was a term used by the dictatorship to refer to the left-wing activists that they were after. It is estimated that during the dictatorship between 76 and 83, around 30,000 men and women, and sometimes also children, were, quote, disappeared. And you need to add to this hundreds of babies who were born to mothers in illegal centers of detention. The process of restitution of their true identity to these babies, who are now grown-ups in their 40s, is slow, and it is still ongoing. At the workshop, Catherine Orr was asked about the use of the term subversive. Did she know how charged the term was? Did she intend it ironically? The retired plastic surgeon uses the word quite lightly, we agreed at the workshop, irresponsibly even. But there is, in his character, in the way he is constructed, an unconscionable lightness or playfulness made manifest in the way he has lived his life. From this privileged place, his personal wealth and his disengagement from what was happening at the time. We concluded, and Catherine's comments were instrumental in helping us arrive at this conclusion, that the use of this word shows precisely the awful nature of the character's dissociation from history. the shock effect of the use of this word, subversive, was also compared to the effect of a stone rippling on the surface of water, far-reaching, lasting, and bound to resonate at other moments in the text. But this is not all. The workshops allowed literary translators to explore their own responses to the text from a very personal place. In a panel discussion that took place at Malva, the Museum of Latin American Art in Buenos Aires, one evening during the Escuela de Otoño week, Dr. Katia Pizzi, director of the Center for the Study of Cultural Memory at the Institute of Modern Languages Research, part of the University of London, who attended the workshops at the Escuela de Otoño, said, "Languages are instruments of communication. Languages, however, can also be instruments of exclusion. Our languages and our bodies help us make sense of the world, but it is memory that gives the world meaning. And it is our memories associated with certain words, I would add, that play such an important part in the translation process. During the week-long workshops, the participants had the opportunity to discuss their memories or post-memories, to use the term coined by Marianne Hirsch. And you can actually read Katia Pizzi's blog if you follow this link. The writer KJ Orr recalls how she began to write her story Disappearances in a short blog that she wrote recently for my Literary Translation and Memory Project blog, to be published soon. And she says, I was watching a pigeon parading back and forth along the length of the terrace railing outside. Parading was the word. The pigeon looked military. And in the week that followed, KJ Orr recalls, he wrote a lot about that pigeon, even attempted writing the story from the pigeon's perspective. But finally, that paragraph didn't make it to the story in the end. And she adds that the time, quote, spent dwelling with an incipient sense of character, paying attention, waiting really to see where the character would choose to go, the choices he would make and had made of his life, the formative choices that had shaped him were informed by the pigeon's appearance on the terrace that day. The pigeon was a reminder of the degree to which a character's perspective shapes a story, and crucially, in the case of Disappearances, the degree to which a character's history, personal and political, filters their perception of the everyday and every day. Again, there is a story behind the story. There's a story of the writing of Disappearances by KJ Orr, a story about the story's creation. I would argue that the same happens with our translation. There is the story of the translators, and every translator's story shapes the translation of the work. So, what have we achieved through the years working together on literary translation process? What have we shown so far? We have shown that the literary translation process creates a space, personal as well as collective, in which narratives are shared, remembered, reimagined, and passed on. We have also shown that each translation is itself a narrative, encompassing the literary translator's personal story of his or her encounter with the other's story, moving along spatial and temporal axes. In brief, through our workshops and collaborative projects with AATI and BCLT, we have succeeded in establishing an international literary translator community of practice. Now Lucila is going to bring our talk to a close by referring to some of the ongoing projects and collaborations between BCLT and AATI.
Thank you, Ceci. And well, I would like to add what you have commented about this the space of literary translation. The fact that this collaboration is about the workshops themselves, but the BCLT has been a crucial partner and inspiration in our autumn school and in the way we have expanded literary translation in Argentina. First of all, through the teaching of literary translation, thanks to the literary translation workshops themselves and the literary translation training the trainer program specifically, right?
Yeah.
Which have brought translators to the UK and well, with your expertise and Katya's and Catherine Davis, right? Anyway, but apart from, including or incorporating new ways into teaching literary translation into our programs, more specifically into including creative writing in literary translation. We have also come to explore and get into new spaces, new literary spaces with literary translation.
I think it's important that the Escuela de Otoño de Traducción Literaria has actually opened up that space for the translators to explore, examine their relationship with their texts. And the texts that we workshopped were texts which invited that sort of exploratory process, that process of introspection, of going back into your own memories. And also the visits, and you have included photos of the visits to Parque de la Memoria, for example, to the former School of Naval Mechanics in April 2017. And following those visits, we had the students, the participants, writing about their experiences. And the creative writing workshops have actually helped immensely in developing their literary creativity and in helping them perhaps loosen up, as it were, and not feel that they are bound to stay very close to the source text, that at times they need to move away and return to the source text.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the experiences were quite unique. We had Giles Fodden, we were working on the novel he was writing, and then doing research along with the author. So the novel was being written and translated at the same time. That was quite a unique experience. And then with KJ also, we were translating a story that was set in Buenos Aires. And although many of us, or most of us, lived in Buenos Aires, we still had to work on research and on creative writing. We couldn't take things for granted. So we were very, very lucky to have experienced that and really to get into the development of writing, of creative writing, right, for those experiences. And then this inspiration, right, through the BCLT has led us to develop different projects with different partners in Argentina and in other countries. First of all, the creation of the Literary Translation and Copyrights Committee in 2012. And then other literary seminars, as I was saying before, getting into other literary spaces, right, like the Buenos Aires International Book Fair or FILBA, Festival Internacional de Literatura de Buenos Aires. There's new collaboration with Malva residency program. A new program called Speed Dating or Cita Express with the Independent Publishers Book Fair, which was quite, inspired in the pitch sessions at the BCLT Summer School program. And then the new theatre translation seminar in Buenos Aires and London, which was held for the first time in November last year. And well, we're having an online version in next week. Hopefully have a real version sometime in London. When we can fly back into the UK. And then there's other new, very, very important projects which you also collaborated with, the International Meeting of Translators and Interpreters of Indigenous and Minority Languages, which was held in Bogota in November last year. So, as you say, this question of bringing literary translation into new spaces is helping us making literary translation more visible, into reflecting on our practice, and into thinking of literary translation as writing, as creative writing. So I'm very, very grateful to you and to your work and to the BCLT. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Lucila. And thank you, BCLT, for allowing us this space to talk about our collaborations and projects.